There are all kinds of historical contingencies hanging on any answer, even within a given society. Why have the Russians taken so brilliantly to chess? There are all sorts of interesting historical questions to be asked about taking to it. As an intellectual question, or perhaps a moral question, why should anyone pay attention? I wonder about the curiosity of scholars. Is scholarship doing a job like stacking so many cans on a shelf? Or is it opening up something new and poking at it and wondering, what is this and where will it take us? The humanities have been, for very good reasons, which Gadamer outlines at the beginning of Truth and Method, largely have steered away from, turned their back on, a direct confrontation with method. So the scholars in the humanities, as far as I can see, are not predisposed to take up these questions, because method is anathema. To many humanists, method is anathema. It is the attempt to specify exactly what is done and how it is done so it can be put into a machine and a crank can be turned and out comes the scholarship. However, at the same time, there is this enormous juggernaut of the late 20th and 21st century called computing. And it is changing things even as we speak. It is unavoidable. And a group of scholars can just go to Google Books, go to a concordance and look for things in it. But as I said, as the volume of material increases which can be searched, the very methods on which the humanities scholarship had been based are going increasingly to run into trouble. Students now tell me that when they start a research project, they go to JSTOR. That is where they start. Can you imagine, from your own training, in my case, those many years ago, starting out a project in, say, the study of Ovid, and going to JSTOR and finding articles surfacing all over the disciplinary landscape? And let us say that I'm a curious fellow and have a bit of time. What happens to my mind as a result of just being confronted with this variety? I like to compare, as Scott Atran does, to what happened to plant biology when, in the age of exploration, people started bringing home things which wouldn't fit under the old taxonomies. So it is, in a sense, looking into the future and seeing something coming and wanting to say, all right, my colleagues, wake up. The mind needs to be prepared for something new, which your students already are being affected by. And it's in part an irrepressible, I hope irrepressible, at least until I die, curiosity. What would it be like if instead, in the text I obsess on, Ovid's Metamorphoses, instead of drawing a magic circle around the poem and saying, all right, within this circle there is Ovid and there's Virgil and there's Lucretius and so on and so on and so on, all the accepted context of study, which my classicist friends will tell me what belongs inside the circle. And then I look inward on the poem and analyze it. And I get some results. And as long as I'm being a classicist and I'm speaking to other classicists, there's great applause. If I talk to a medievalist, they'll raise their eyebrows a bit and think, well, that's not how it was read in the Middle Ages. What if, instead of looking downward and inward with this magic circle, I were able to describe what happens when I read the poem? What happens in that particular poem is a very good example, generates all sorts of sequences of possibilities which go forward in time and are responsible for the 2,000-year reception history of the poem. What about modeling that? If I could model that, I could maybe push a button, or I could engage with the machine, and I could see what the manifold possibilities were based on that description, and then I could look at what is known as the reception history and compare the two and see, okay, this was a possibility, but it wasn't realized. Why not? Or why was it, perhaps it was realized somewhere where no one noticed. And it's that sort of curiosity part, which is the intellectual answer, and the moral imperative that I think computing is bringing, our very own invention, by the way, not something from Mars, is bringing to us. Is that an answer?
Yes, but my attempt was to focus on the distinction between the kind of prototypes people like our friends in Pisa are developing, or our friends here in Bari are developing, and the average machines available to your students, my students, and ourselves, the average historians like JSTOR. I think what you envision is a world in which there is a shorter distance between the prototypes and the machines available to a wider audience. And I do not see that gap between the prototypes and the machines as closing, as shortening. That was not an objection. I like your vision.
It is diverging?
No, but I don't see them coming closer. I've been watching what the computer people are doing in Pisa or Bari, and I like what they do. But still, they keep building prototypes. To pursue your metaphor machine, the strength of, let's call it computing in biology, is that on average, different laboratories in different countries can use roughly the same machines to develop their own projects. We are not doing this with the prototypes being built by humanities computing. We are using the average tools like JSTOR or Google Book Search that have been conceived typically on a different level, not that of research, but of course, being pushed by many strong powers in the economic world. I like that too. But still, let me understand whether you think the gap between the prototypes and what is being used by the average historians is going to close or not.
That's an institutional answer from my point of view. It is a disciplinary institutional matter. If humanities computing, or if the application of computing to the humanities is manifested as it tends to be in computational linguistics and in computer science, where the interest is in certain problems in computational linguistics and in computer science, then you don't go any further than the prototype because you've learned what you wish to learn, and on you go. And the prototype may never emerge from the lab. It may never have any influence in the world. If you look at the history of humanities computing, you see that some of the most brilliant tools were invented, stayed in labs, and then were forgotten. The very best hypertext system in the world, probably Fress, built at Brown University in the early 1980s, never got anywhere. The very best note-keeping system, note cards, built at Xerox PARC about the same time, was never, well, it was briefly marketed, but Xerox PARC never knew how to market anything, so it failed. But it was serving the interests of the people who, within a discipline of their own devising. However, in what in King's College London we call humanities computing, is all about collaborative research.